Welcome to the Restricted Handling Podcast. This is what's been going on in China in the past 24 hours. We'll start where the world was watching, Davos. Yesterday, we talked about allies hedging and the global system looking fractured. Today adds a sharper edge to that. President Trump didn't just signal skepticism about globalization, he more or less pronounced it dead on stage at the World Economic Forum. Tariffs as the cost of entry, alliances framed as bad business deals, and NATO portrayed as an old subscription nobody should be paying for anymore. If Davos is usually about calming markets and smoothing nerves, this was the opposite. It was disruption as performance. China didn't have to lift a finger. This is an update worth underscoring because it builds directly on what we discussed yesterday. Beijing didn't counterpunch, didn't escalate rhetorically. Instead, Chinese officials leaned into familiar language about globalization, climate cooperation, and renewable energy. They corrected Trump's claims about wind power with numbers and moved on. Same strategy as before. Let others burn credibility while China presents itself as predictable, technocratic, and boring, in a world where boring suddenly feels safe. Europe is still trying to reconcile that image with reality, and nowhere is that tension clearer than the UK. Yesterday, we talked about Britain's approval of China's massive new embassy in London as a signal of controlled exposure. Today, that story gets heavier. Legal challenges are forming, residents are mobilizing, and intelligence officials have now publicly acknowledged that espionage and influence risks are real, but in their view, manageable. That public acknowledgement matters. It's London saying this isn't ignorance or denial, it's a conscious trade-off. What's changed since yesterday is that this decision is no longer just symbolic. It's actively clearing the runway for Prime Minister Starmer's upcoming trip to Beijing and the restart of formal UK-China business dialogue. This isn't a return to the old golden era. It's something colder. Britain wants capital and access without illusions. China gets legitimacy and physical presence in the heart of London. Nobody's pretending this is friendship. That same friction shows up elsewhere in Europe. Czech authorities detained a person suspected of working with Chinese intelligence. Details are thin, which usually means the case is real. It's an update to a pattern we've been tracking. While China talks cooperation and trade, it continues to run old-school intelligence operations across the continent. Quiet, persistent, and very unglamorous. Think less spy thriller, more spreadsheet. Shift to Asia, and yesterday's Taiwan story gets more complicated, not cleaner. The $40 billion defense spending plan we talked about is still stuck. If anything, the political lines have hardened. Opposition lawmakers are now openly tying delayed U.S. weapons deliveries to their resistance, arguing that Taiwan is paying up front and waiting indefinitely. That frustration is becoming a political identity, not just a policy dispute. At the same time, new details from Taiwan's counterintelligence investigations add weight to the concern. This is an update, not a repeat. We already knew Chinese espionage was widespread. What's clearer now is how cheap and effective it's been. Active duty soldiers guarding sensitive facilities passed internal layouts, guard rosters, and procedures to Chinese handlers for sums that wouldn't buy a used car in Taipei. Paid in cryptocurrency, recruited online, managed remotely. This isn't glamorous espionage, it's industrial-scale erosion. Taiwan is responding on the margins, revoking residency permits for Chinese influencers accused of pushing unification narratives, prosecuting intermediaries who tried to bribe officials. But the contrast remains stark. China is preparing for contingencies. Taiwan is still fighting through budget mechanics and legal process. That asymmetry is visible to everyone watching. On the military side, China continues to do what it's been doing. Slow, deliberate capability building. Satellite imagery confirmed that one of China's aircraft carriers entered a new dry dock at Yulin Naval Base. This is an update from yesterday's broader naval discussion, and it matters because sustainment is power. China can now maintain carriers in the South China Sea without sending them back north. That's not a parade move, that's a logistics milestone. Add to that new reporting on anti-submarine warfare training by China's large Type 055 destroyers. These ships are designed to hunt submarines, share data across fleets, and operate as command hubs. The exercises weren't flashy, but they were realistic. Deep water, real-time data sharing, helicopter integration. This is China practicing for the kind of fight it actually expects, not the one it wants to post about. The H-6J bomber story also evolves here. We talked before about its role as a maritime strike platform. What's clearer now is the emphasis on its networked role: reconnaissance pods, data links, coordination with electronic warfare aircraft. The unspoken truth remains: break the network, and the threat weakens fast. But China keeps leaning into this system because intimidation doesn't require perfection. It requires just enough doubt. U.S. naval activity in the Taiwan Strait continues, but the pace is still lower than in previous years. A recent transit by a destroyer and a survey ship was closely monitored by Chinese forces. No drama, no escalation, just mutual observation. This is normalization, and normalization doesn't mean safety. It means everyone's getting used to living on the edge. Inside China, repression continues without apology. The national security trial of Hong Kong's Tiananmen Vigil organizers is underway. The charge, effectively, is that remembering history is a crime. Calls to end one-party rule are being treated as subversion. This is not new, but it's now fully procedural, fully institutional. Beijing isn't improvising anymore, it's enforcing. Beyond Asia, China's intelligence and security footprint keeps expanding. Updated reporting highlights deepening cooperation with Egypt, surveillance systems, air defense technology, joint exercises that have unsettled Israel. This builds on yesterday's discussion of China's growing role in regions where it can gain leverage without taking formal responsibility. No bases, no alliances, just access and influence. In Latin America, Peru's president is still under scrutiny for undisclosed meetings with a Chinese businessman. He denies corruption, admits procedural mistakes, and faces an investigation in a country with a long history of political instability. This fits the pattern we've been tracking: Chinese commercial engagement blending into political influence in environments where guardrails are already weak. Back in the U.S., Homeland Security concerns continue to pile up. A Chinese national has been charged with photographing sensitive military facilities tied to strategic bomber operations. Cyber reporting points to continued Chinese intrusions into critical infrastructure, while North Korean hackers operating in China's orbit are running QR code phishing campaigns against government and academic targets. It's low cost, annoying, and effective, which is exactly why it keeps happening. China is also reinforcing itself internally. New gold discoveries add to strategic reserves, and corruption investigations are taking down senior officials. This isn't cleanup, it's consolidation. Control the resources, control the system, remind everyone that loyalty has no expiration date. Thanks so much for listening and for being part of the RH community. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribing, leaving a quick 5-star review, or sharing it with someone you know makes a huge difference. It's how this network will grow. We also publish a daily written intel brief on Substack, where you'll find even deeper coverage of Russia and China, along with insights on Iran, the Middle East, and the DPRK.